I never thought the person who would destroy my life would share my blood. It was a rainy Thursday when I found out my half-sister, Clara, had drained my late father's estate before the will could be read. Not just a little, creative accounting. She had forged documents, bribed the executor, and moved every cent into an account I couldn't touch. She smiled at me at the funeral like nothing had happened, wearing a black designer dress I knew she could only afford with money that was supposed to be mine. I could have gone to the police. I could have hired lawyers. But Clara didn't just take my inheritance, she took my dignity, my future, and the trust one had in family. She deserved something bigger than prison. She deserved to watch her life crumble from the inside, and that's when I met Adrian. He was Clara's husband, tall, devastatingly charming, and completely unaware that the woman he'd married was a snake. The first time we talked was at a charity gala. Clara was off in a corner laughing with some politician's son, and Adrian stood alone at the bar, sipping whiskey like he wished he were anywhere else. I introduced myself, pretending not to know who he was. He told me he was married to chaos. I laughed, because he had no idea how true that was. Over the next weeks, I became the friend of Clara didn't know she needed. I pretended to forgive her for the misunderstanding about the inheritance. I got close to her inner circle, her friends, her assistants, even her hairdresser. And Adrian? Well, Adrian got close to me the first time we kissed. It wasn't planned. We were at Clara's lake house for a weekend getaway. She'd left early to handle a work emergency, which I later found out was code for sleep with her personal trainer. Adrian and I stayed behind, drinking wine on the dock under the stars. He told me he sometimes wished he could just disappear and start over. I told him I could help him do exactly that. From then on, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about precision. Every secret Clara had, I collected. Every lie she told Adrian, I documented. I showed him messages from her lovers, bank statements from her hidden accounts, and a photo of her signing the fake will that stole my inheritance. I didn't just make him doubt her, I made him hate her. When the moment came, it was surgical. Adrian filed for divorce. Half of Clara's assets, the ones she'd stolen from me, went straight to him in the settlement. I knew exactly what he'd do next, because we'd already planned it together. He transferred those assets to me. Legally. Publicly, but the final twist? That came at Clara's birthday party. I walked in on Adrian's arm, wearing the sapphire necklace my father had bought for my mother, the one Clara swore had been lost in a move. Clara froze mid-sentence, her wineglass shaking. Adrian kissed me in front of everyone and whispered loud enough for her to hear, "I finally found someone I can trust." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, pale, realizing she'd lost everything, her money, her husband, her reputation, to the sister she thought she had destroyed, and me? I didn't just get my inheritance back. I got the sweetest kind of revenge, the kind that looks you in the eye, smiles, and walks away holding the life you used to have. Clara had always been the golden child, at least in public. Behind closed doors, she was a master manipulator. My father used to say she could sell ice to an Eskimo, but what he really meant was, she lies so well, she could talk you out of your own house. When he died, I didn't just lose a parent. I lost my anchor. And Clara wasted no time circling like a shark. She convinced the executor of the will that I was mentally unstable, after grief, that my father had privately told her to handle everything so I wouldn't get overwhelmed. It was ridiculous, but apparently a well-placed bribe can make ridiculous look official. By the time I realized what she'd done, the money was gone. The family home was listed under her name. Even my mother's jewelry, the one thing I thought she'd never touch, had vanished at first. I wanted to ruin her in court. But Clara was slippery. She had friends in law firms, in politics. She'd spin the narrative so I looked like the bitter, jealous sister. That's when I understood, legal justice wouldn't work. I needed personal justice. Enter Adrian the first. Time I saw him up close, I understood why Clara married him. He had that magnetic quality, the kind of man people instinctively trusted. He wasn't flashy. No expensive watch, no arrogant smirk. Just a quiet confidence and those sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything that we crossed paths at a fundraiser. Clara was schmoozing with a senator, and I accidentally bumped into Adrian at the bar. I didn't tell him I was her sister, just a friend of the family. He asked how I knew Clara, and I said, let's just say I've seen her at her best and her worst. That was all it took. His curiosity was hooked. Over the next month, I threaded myself into his life slowly, deliberately. A coffee here. A long conversation there. He started confiding in me. Little complaints at first, Clara's spending, her unpredictable mood swings, her mysterious business trips. I played the sympathetic ear, never pushing, just letting him talk. Meanwhile, I was building my arsenal. I tracked Clara's affairs, her offshore accounts, even her connections to a shady real estate deal in Miami. Every piece of dirt I found, I locked away, waiting for the right moment. The turning point came during that lake house weekend. Clara left for urgent business, which I already knew was an overnight with her trainer in the city. Adrian and I stayed, drinking by the water. He told me he sometimes wished he could burn it all down and start fresh. I smiled and said, sometimes. You don't have to burn it. Sometimes you just quietly take it apart. From that night on, we were partners. Not romantically, not yet. First, we dismantled Clara's safety nets. Adrian quietly pulled his name from their joint investments. He tipped me off about her financial patterns, allowing me to mirror her transactions with my own anonymous accounts. When the day came, Adrian's divorce papers were a surgical strike. Every asset she'd stolen from me, or bought with my father's money, became part of the settlement. Then Adrian transferred them to me. By the time she realized, it was legal, clean, and irreversible. But revenge isn't just about money. It's about humiliation. That's why, at her lavish birthday party, I made sure the entire room saw me wearing my mother's sapphire necklace, the one Clara had claimed was lost forever. Adrian, now very much mine, kissed me in front of the crowd and said, I finally found someone I can trust. The silence that followed was delicious. Clara's smile faltered. Her glass nearly slipped from her hand. She didn't make a scene, she just stood there, finally realizing she'd been outplayed, and that was just the beginning. Because I wasn't done yet, Clara didn't disappear quietly. People like her never do. A week after Adrian's public kiss, I started noticing little accidents. My car tires slashed. A brick through my office window. And then, an anonymous envelope with photos of me and Adrian, the implication clear, she was gearing up for a smear campaign. What Clara didn't realize was that I was already inside her communications. Months ago, I'd had a friend, a cyberforensics guy, install a tiny device on her laptop when she left it unattended at the lake house. I could read her emails in real time. Every threat she sent, every anonymous tip to tabloids. Every desperate reach out to her network of dirty contacts. I saw it before it left her inbox. She wasn't planning just a smear. She was plotting to frame me for embezzlement. The plan was genius in its own way. Fabricate fake transfers from Adrian's company into my personal account, tip the authorities, and let the IRS tear me apart. I let her work on it for 3 weeks. Feeding her just enough breadcrumbs to make her think she was winning. Adrian played his part perfectly, acting distant with me in public, making Clara believe their reconciliation was possible if she could just destroy me. Then came the charity gala. The perfect stage. Clara arrived in a deep red gown, every inch the triumphant queen. She worked the room like a politician, all teeth and charm. Halfway through the night, the MC announced a special presentation from Adrian. The lights dimmed. Screens lit up. And suddenly, the room was watching a slideshow of Clara's offshore accounts, her fake shell companies, her text messages with her lovers, and, my personal favorite, the email thread where she discussed framing me for financial crimes. It was all time-stamped, all verifiable. The MC wasn't an MC at all, he was an investigative journalist Adrian had been feeding for months. The gala was actually a live exposé. Clara froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a wave. By the end of the night, she wasn't walking out in her heels, she was being escorted by federal agents. Her downfall was swift and public. Headlines the next morning screamed, "Socialite caught in $1 million fraud scheme, husband and sister-in-law expose years of deceit." Adrian and I didn't hide after that. We traveled. We built a life with the money she'd once stolen. Now legally ours. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was knowing that Clara, the sister who'd stolen everything, now sat in a concrete cell, replaying the moment her empire turned to ash, and the last thing she saw before the agents took her away, me. Wearing that sapphire necklace. Smiling. I was standing in her kitchen, barefoot, holding a glass of her favorite wine. Not because I was invited, but because she didn't know I was here. Outside, laughter floated in through the open window. She was in the garden, surrounded by friends. Wearing the same smug smile she'd had since the day she stole everything from me. The will was supposed to split my father's estate evenly. That's what he told me before he died. But the day of the reading, she showed up with a different will. One I'd never seen before. One that left everything to her, the house, the money, even the antique watch collection that was supposed to be mine. My stepsister, Lila, and now I was about to make sure she lost more than she ever stole. *, she didn't see me slip out the back door, she didn't hear the click of my phone camera as I snapped the photos, her husband's hands were all over the caterer. I almost laughed. 3 weeks ago, she took my inheritance. Now, I had something that could take hers. I didn't go home that night, I went to a hotel, one her husband used often, under a fake name. *, the front desk clerk knew me from before. She slid me a spare key without a word. Inside the suite, her husband's laptop, wide open, emails, bank transfers, photos, all proof that he'd been funneling her money into an account she didn't even know existed. I was holding the kind of leverage people kill for, and I wasn't done yet. *, by the next morning, my plan was crystal clear. Step 1, make him trust me. Step 2, make her doubt him. Step 3, take everything they stole, and more. I called him. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight. "Did you tell her?" I smiled into the phone. "Not yet. But we need to talk. Alone." We met at a little corner cafe where no one would think to look. He was jumpy, checking the door every few seconds. I slid a photo across the table, him and the caterer, kissing. His face went pale. "How much do you want?" he asked. That was the moment I knew, this wasn't going to be blackmail, this was going to be war, because the truth, I didn't just want his money, I wanted to destroy her life the way she destroyed mine, from the inside out, and I had the perfect way to start. *, the first trap was simple and invisible. I knew her weakness, appearances, everything my cousin did had to look perfect from the outside, even if it was rotting underneath. So I gave her something that looked like a gift, but was actually a grenade. I accidentally ran into her at a charity gala, hair flawless, dress expensive but understated, the kind that whispered money without screaming it. I smiled like we were best friends from childhood. "Oh my God. I was just telling someone about you," I said, pulling a velvet box from my clutch. Inside was a delicate diamond bracelet. "It's just something I thought you'd love. A peace offering." Her eyes sparkled. She loved shiny things. She clasped it on right there in front of a dozen people, making sure everyone saw. What she didn't know was that inside the clasp was a tiny listening device, not the cheap kind, the kind that picked up everything. By midnight, I was in my apartment with a glass of wine, listening to her whisper on the phone. "Don't worry, he has no idea the will was changed. By the time he finds out, it'll be too late." Bingo! *, the second trap was trickier, because it involved turning her greatest asset into my ally. Her husband, Daniel. Daniel was tall, sharp, and always dressed like the cover of a men's magazine. But I'd seen the cracks before. The way his eyes drifted when she talked too much. The quiet sighs he thought no one noticed. So I found a way in, not by seducing him, but by making him trust me. It started with an accidental meeting at the wine bar he liked. I pretended I didn't see him at first, then turned, surprised. "Oh, Daniel. Wow, it's been forever." We talked about nothing, weather, wine, the fact that the city had become unbearable in the summer. But I slipped in just one line, "Family can be complicated, can't it?" His jaw tightened. Hook set. Over the next few weeks, we bumped into each other 3 more times. Always by chance. Always in places where he felt comfortable opening up. And one night, over a second glass of Malbec, he said it, "She's not who you think she is." I didn't flinch. Just nodded like I already knew. That's when he leaned closer. "She's keeping something from me, and I think you can help me find out what it is." That night was electric with tension. Daniel had asked me to meet him at a small, dimly lit cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one knew your name and no one asked questions. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting in a shadowed corner, his fingers tapping an anxious rhythm on the table. In front of him was a plain manila envelope. "Close the door behind you," he murmured. I did that. He slid the envelope toward me. "I shouldn't be showing you this, but you need to see who she really is." Inside were photos. Dozens of them, her, my cousin, at luxury resorts with a man I'd never seen before, her holding hands, kissing, laughing like a woman who didn't have a husband waiting at home. My stomach flipped, but I forced a slow, steady breath. This isn't recent, is it? Daniel's jaw tightened. "Last month. She told me she was visiting her mother." And then he said the part that would change everything: "She used your inheritance money to pay for these trips." I traced the accounts. It was like gasoline had been poured onto the fire already burning inside me. "Then let's burn her whole world down," I whispered, and Daniel smiled. Daniel and I didn't waste time. If she'd used my inheritance to fund her secret life, then every dollar was a weapon, and I was going to turn it on her. Our first move was quiet. We created a fake charity, something glossy and believable, the Haven Foundation. Its mission? Providing shelter and opportunity for at-risk women. Her weak spot had always been her obsession with looking generous. She couldn't resist donating if it meant public praise. Within a week, we got her to wire $50,000 straight into the account, an account I controlled. She even posted a smiling photo online holding the donation certificate. The best part? That post caught the attention of her mystery man. We knew because Daniel had her phone cloned. I could read every message. Turns out, he wasn't a lover. He was worse. He was blackmailing her, using photos from years ago, threatening to expose them to her husband unless she kept paying. Daniel leaned back in his chair when we read that text. "This isn't just a scandal," he said slowly. "This is a time bomb." I didn't just want my money back anymore. I wanted her life to collapse so completely that she'd never recover. We set the next domino in motion by feeding the blackmailer exactly what he wanted, but from our hand. Daniel anonymously sent him a tip: "She has triple the money she told you. And it's hidden in an offshore account in the Caymans." It was bait. And he bit hard. 2 days later, he demanded double his usual payment. She panicked. To cover the extra, she liquidated stocks, the same ones her husband had been tracking for months. When the numbers suddenly didn't match, suspicion exploded. Her husband confronted her in the driveway. I know, because Daniel and I were parked 2 houses down, watching. Voices rose. Hands flew. She tried to spin a story about supporting a friend in trouble, but he didn't buy a word. And then, the kill shot. Daniel leaked the real photos to her husband before the blackmailer could. Except we edited them just enough to imply she wasn't alone. In the images, a blurred male figure stood beside her. We made sure her husband believed it was his best friend. The fallout was instant. Her husband threw her out of the house that night. The blackmailer realized someone had beaten him to the punch and turned on her viciously, threatening to post everything. But she didn't know yet that all roads, the fake charity, the leaked photos, the sudden money gaps, led back to me, and that I wasn't finished. By the end of that week, she had gone from the queen of charity galas to a ghost no one wanted to be seen with. Her so-called friends stopped answering calls. Invitations vanished. Even her favorite spa lost at her appointment. Code for your bad for business. Now, Daniel and I kept the pressure on. We dropped whispers into the right ears, a banker here, a socialite there, about missing donations, and mysterious offshore movements. Nobody needed proof. In our circle, the suggestion alone was enough to poison a reputation. Then she made the mistake I was hoping for. She decided to clear her name by confronting me in public. The IT happened at a rooftop fundraiser, one of the last places she could still get through the door. She walked in wearing that smug, tight smile she used to win over rooms, but her eyes were already wild. Enjoying yourself? She asked, pretending to clink glasses. I leaned in and whispered so only she could hear, careful. People are watching how low you'll go. Her composure cracked. She started accusing me, loudly, of planting lies, and turning everyone against her. Phones came out. People recorded. And that's when Daniel, standing behind her, let the next bomb drop. From his phone, he airdropped a folder to everyone in the room. Inside? Screenshots of her encrypted messages with the blackmailer, and copies of the bank transfers. It was surgical. Public humiliation, maximum audience. By the time she realized what had happened, the event security was already asking her to leave. She left in tears. I stayed and smiled for the cameras. After that rooftop disaster, Melisa disappeared for a while. No sightings at the usual brunch spots, no charity boards, no smug posts on social media. It was almost disappointing, until I realized she wasn't hiding. She was plotting. Point one night, Daniel forwarded me an email, an anonymous tip sent to the press, accusing me of embezzling funds from my late father's estate. Cute. She was trying to flip the narrative. Only problem? She didn't know I'd already anticipated it. Months earlier, I had gathered airtight proof of every transaction I'd ever made. I handed it to my lawyer with one instruction: sit on this until she tries something. When the reporter called for a statement, my lawyer dropped the evidence, plus a little bonus, a copy of Melissa's forged signature on a trust fund withdrawal she wasn't entitled to. The next morning, the headline wasn't about me. It was, "Socialite under investigation for financial fraud." From there, things moved fast. Her accounts were frozen. Her name was flagged on luxury store credit lists. Even her precious penthouse, the one she used to lord over me, was suddenly at risk. The real twist? The investigator assigned to her case had been my father's accountant. Loyal to the bone, and more than happy to make Melissa's life miserable. Within weeks, she wasn't sipping champagne at galas. She was meeting with public defenders in back rooms, wearing sunglasses indoors to hide the stress, and I was just getting started. Melissa's last line of defense was her husband, Grant. The perfect trophy, tall, charming, and loyal. Or so she thought. That here's the thing about Grant, he wasn't exactly immune to charm himself. Especially when it came in the form of someone who knew exactly how to make him feel seen, heard, and slightly dangerous. I didn't seduce him in the obvious way. No candlelit dinners, no provocative texts. Instead, I became his confidant. The person he could call when Melisa blew up over something trivial, or when she forgot to invite him to events because she didn't want him to overshadow her. It started innocently enough. A drink here, a lunch there. Then one night, after he showed up at my place looking like he just walked through hell, I let him in, and didn't let him leave. And Melisa had no idea, until the night of the gala. The same gala she'd been bragging about for months. The night she planned to reclaim her place in society. She arrived in her glittering silver gown, smiling for the cameras. And then Grant stepped out of my car, in my company, holding my hand. The flashbulbs went insane. You could actually see the moment her face cracked beneath the perfect makeup. By the next morning, gossip sites had a field day. Grant Whitmore leaves wife, seen with mystery woman. They didn't have to dig far to find out who I was. Melisa called. Once. Twice. 10 times. I didn't answer. Instead, I posted a single photo, Grant and I on the balcony of my father's old estate, champagne in hand, the caption reading, "Some things are worth taking back." Within days, she filed for divorce. Within weeks, she moved out of the city. And within months, she was nothing more than a cautionary tale whispered about over martinis. I didn't just take my inheritance back. I took her future, her reputation, and the man she thought she owned, and I enjoyed every second. 3 months later, I was standing on the balcony of my new apartment, the one overlooking the city she used to brag about from her penthouse. Melisa was gone. Not dead, not in jail, just irrelevant. Her so-called friends had vanished, her forever husband was mine, and every door that once opened for her slammed shut. The last time I saw her, she was working the coat check at a charity gala. She looked right through me, as if pretending I didn't exist would erase the truth. But I leaned in, smiling that slow smile she always hated, and whispered, "You should have left my inheritance alone." Because now, she had nothing. And I had everything.